morning, good afternoon, good evening. Zimbabwe is a failed state, and one of the signs of a failed state is that it's not, or the majority of its people are desperate for even some of the most basic things of life: food, water, electricity, a life with dignity. And this comes as a result of the state failing to create a political and economic environment where people can do things for themselves. People are poor in Zimbabwe, not because they're incapable of creating wealth, but because the political system does not allow them to do so. Here is a short video clip of people celebrating food handouts from the government.
Mashisti mawani. Mashisti mawani. Mashisti mawani, guys. Bagaipa. Thank you, Your Excellency. Rory Ragazara nema hampa checks. Ukune mahamba. Miwe. Uchi baba. Uchi baba. What's this thing, guys?
Benji, what do you think? Gucci.
Good, good day to you and good day to our viewers. Thank you for joining us. I mean, since 1980, this is what the Zanu PF has been good at. You know, keeping people so impoverished that when they see food, it's a song and dance. You know, you shouldn't be expecting people to be getting given handouts such as food hampers. We would be expecting people, when we talk of empowering, you don't empower people with food. That is a starving man. That is shameful to see on your own people dancing because they have seen food, something as basic as our staple food, maize meal. It's so pathetic, very very pathetic. You kind of feel, of course, maybe they would not understand, but you should feel sorry for the person that is doing this to another human being.
Well, in this case here, they are being given this food handout. This year, from what I've learned from social media, Zimbabwe is expecting a reasonable crop. So this is not as if there is a serious drought and people need help. They don't need help. This is being given to keep them happy. But here is one of the real big issues in this particular debate. This is an occasion where one of the leaders of the war veterans is addressing a group of people regarding handouts from the government.
Toda kutenda comrade president nebasa guru ravaita kubva honde ichipera kusvika patave zvataitirwa namunangagwa mashura hapana akambotirangarira kunze kwamunangagwa vari voko vatirangarira nokutipa fandi iri kutaurwa iyi vatirangarira nokuvakwa kwedzimba uku vatirangarira nemabhou anofanira kuiswa paimba imwe neimwe yemunhu akarwa honde chimureni.
The emphasis there is literally all the war veterans who fought in the War of Liberation appreciate this gift from the regime. They're going to have a borehole sunk at their homestead, and the regime has been building 2-3 roomed houses, brick houses for them. There are many questions that comes up. One of them is, why is it that this whole group of war veterans need this help from the government? All of them. This is literally all of them. The only ones that probably will not get this gift are those who already have a job in government, in the army, in the police, or wherever. But otherwise, even those who were working in the army or government, so if you have retired, and unless you got a farm or something, you need this gift. Why is it that this whole group of people are so impoverished that even after 45 years, they've not been able to build for themselves a decent house, sink a borehole? They need that help from government. This is amazing. Ben.
Like I said, Zanu PF has purposely, kept people impoverished, just so that they are always, reliable on them, and that way they are subjective to them. What they say goes. That is everything that is to it. It's not a good gesture. Like I said, some of these things are basic human, rights, and they are found even on Maslow's hierarchy of needs: food, a shelter. That is below the, right at the bottom of that pyramid. How you find almost everyone in Zimbabwe is still at the bottom, struggling to get the very basics, shows you the kind of regime or government that we have, that have made it basically and practically impossible for Zimbabweans to spread their wings and fly, lest they fly and see better. So they have clipped our wings and kept our heads low. This is what they want.
Well, there are other questions that one can ask as well. war veterans, the only group in society that needs government help to buy bicycles. It's true. When these war veterans get the bicycles, they really appreciate it. Most of them do not have a bicycle or anything better, even after 45 years. Yes, some of them are getting advanced in age. Even when they were younger, they could not afford something like that. It was a luxury way beyond their financial ability. But are they the only group that needs help? The answer is no. 50% of Zimbabwe's population today, they are living in abject poverty. They could do with a government built house, brick house. They could do with government drilling a borehole at their homestead. They could do with a bicycle. The question is, they will never get one from government, not this government. So we come back to square one again. What was the War of Independence about? We had a situation where we had the whites, they were entitled to a first class education system. They were entitled to wealth. They were given farms. They had the opportunity to find work, etc., etc. And most important of all, of course, they had a vote. And as a black person, you had to live in a mud hut. Education you got was substandard. You had no vote. And in the rural areas, although you built your hut even on a 10 square meter piece of land, the regime refused to let you have title deeds to that piece of land. It made economic sense to give these people title deeds, but Ian Smith said no, because he argued if you give the blacks the land, ownership to property, get their foot on the economic ladder, the next thing they would want is political power. And it was for that reason that people in the rural areas were denied title deeds. The irony is, after independence, Mugabe also decided that he was not going to give blacks title deeds. After independence, particularly starting the 2000s, Zanu PF started seizing the farms. And the ruling elite got those former white-owned farms. Here is Mnangagwa standing in one of his farms. As you can see, it stretches right to the horizon. Some of these Zanu PF ruling elite have as many as 16 farms. the late dictator Mugabe's daughter, Bona, she reportedly has 16 to 21 farms, which, if you add the amount of land in those 16 farms, it's enough to be the size of Lesotho. And Mnangagwa has recently allowed those ZANU-PF ruling elite to have title deeds to the farms. What is interesting here is that ZANU-PF is digging these boreholes and building this through three-roomed house, brick house, to the war veterans. They are still not given title deeds to that piece of land on which it is built. If any of those war veterans were to support the opposition, for instance, you'd be surprised how quickly they would be booted off out of those houses. There's no title deeds. This is at the heart of our failed political system. Ben.
I mean, you have to look at it this way. All all what ZANU PF does is not out of the goodness of their heart. Oh no, no. I don't think they have any goodness in their heart or kindness in their heart. What they are doing here is bribing certain individuals to keep the peace or to further their own ambition. Look at the timing of all these, you know, donations or good gesture, if you want to look at it whatever way. The timing, what has happened? The war veterans were now up in arms to say, how can you guys be just having, the fine, dining of Zimbabwe, and we are, at the bottom of the food chain. Yet we were the ones that brought about this good living. So to keep, the peace and to keep them quiet, they had to do something. And then they decided, let's just build them, the 2 bedroom or 3 bedroom house on their stands and give them water to drink and a bicycle to exercise, and they should be okay. And for sure, lo and behold, here they are singing, sing song of praise. Mugabe did the same thing when there was unrest. He gave them, $50,000 each. All these things are actually unbudgeted for, but they have to be done for them to, keep the calm, keep the peace, and continue with their looting. So at the end of the day, this is not kindness. This is a bribe. And we've seen bribes now have gone so far or as much as bribing even the opposition MPs. They gave them $40,000 loans, of which we all know there was not a loan. That, then nobody pays it back. Judges were given $500,000 each. The timing of that, in normal business sense, you cannot give somebody a loan that will be out of a job. For example, the MPs. 2 weeks or a month later, they were, Parliament was going to be dissolved. How do you give somebody a loan of such huge amounts when they're going to be out of a job? No, it was to keep them calm and continue, the way they are doing, while ZANU PF gets to keep the majority shareholdings of Zimbabwe. Since 1980, this is what ZANU PF has been all about. This is what ZANU PF has been doing. Every time when there is unrest, there is a scheme. Give them something just to keep them quiet, bribe them, you know, and they continue. And unfortunately, it's working for them.
Well, here is Margaret Ongo, herself a war veteran, and at one point a ZANU PF MP. When she fell out with Mugabe, she became an independent and she won a seat in parliament and she was an independent MP. Here she is speaking on why the rural people are being kept poor and destitute.
They have wrong priorities, especially the current government. How can you go and build an airport which services a few people, and the majority are the elite and the so-called investors? Look at the rural. I made you come to interview me because I wanted you to have the experience of the roads that we are using. If we go today to our hospital there, you feel pity with that's a hospital in a rural area. If we go to our clinic, you feel pity. We have no piped water here. Do you know the reason why the rural people vote for ZANU PF? One, they're intimidated. Two, the policy is that the rural people should remain poor and subservient to the government. They should remain poor because if they remain poor, they continue singing the song for their master. This is why these people have been impoverished. It's for a reason. Because at the moment, if you economic empower these people, they'll go out of hand. ZANU PF will never have control over them.
We cannot deny that all this generosity by the party is to bribe the people. Meanwhile, the regime is also keeping them poor. When a whole group, a whole segment of society, the war veterans, the whole group, find themselves in a situation where, unless they're one of the ruling elite, you can do with a gift of a brick house from government, a borehole, and a bicycle, because you cannot afford those things yourself. There is something sickeningly wrong with that country, particularly when you look at how filthy rich the ruling elite themselves are. As we heard with this group, they were praising Mnangagwa for the hamper, the food hampers. The food hampers are being delivered at a very strategic point. On Monday, many people have been encouraged to come out in support of the so-called Blessed Gesa uprising, demanding that the regime, the Mnangagwa regime, must go. But what I want to emphasize here is the fact that we have got a political system in Zimbabwe in which people like Blessed Gesa, a war veteran, have been brainwashed to the point where they believe that ZANU PF is the only party of government. And anybody else is not fit to govern. And this has been at the heart of our problem. As much as Geza is calling for an uprising, what he's proposing to put in its place is VP Chiwenga, who is already in this present government. And we have seen this happen in 2017 when there was a military coup. The solution was to remove Mugabe and replace him with Mnangagwa. Mnangagwa was already in the Zanu-PF government. So these people have been brainwashed into believing that if the government of the day is not performing, you've got to replace it with a Zanu-PF government. That's why we're going round and round in circles. In fact, the boreholes and the houses that Mnangagwa is building for the war veterans is that it says it's divided the war veterans. Some of them are supporting Geza, others are against him. Like here, the gentleman who was speaking in that video clip. This is a nation that has been divided, and at the present moment, the nation is being told you've got the choice of supporting Mnangagwa or Chiwenga. Zanu-PF Team A or Zanu-PF Team B. There is no other choice. And what I'm saying to the people today is that we have got to look outside the box. Zanu-PF is a dictatorship that has kept people in abject poverty for its own survival, so that the few can benefit at the expense of the many. We have to look outside the box. We must look at dismantling the Zanu-PF dictatorship itself, not just replacing one dictator with another. Thank you. Ben, do you want to give your closing remarks?
In closing, I would want to say, I will give the benefit of the doubt during the 2017 coup. People may not have known better when they replaced Mugabe, for Mnangagwa. We could say they did not know better. But, now that we have lived through it, we should now know that the problem is not simply replacing the head. The problem is with the entire organization, what they stand for, what ZANU-PF is all about. And what's now sickening is here we are about to do the same very thing. It's as though we have never learned a single thing. What is happening? Zimbabwe is a dictatorship. ZANU-PF has purposefully kept hold of power by bribing and keeping people impoverished such that they don't fly. Changing the head will simply just mean the second in command will come and continue doing the same very thing or even worse than what the previous head was doing. And I always want to say, this same Chiwenga is the same guy that fired all nurses just because they wanted a decent wage. He fired the whole lot. How then does he become the right person for Zimbabwe? in our desperation, we shouldn't lose our heads. And we must not say because there is no alternative when there are alternatives. We have spoken about the alternative. A lot of people have said, you only talk about don't do this, don't do this. But we have spoken about the alternative. The problem is you do not want the alternative. You want your own. And here we are about to make the same grave mistake, and we will endure it. And mark my words, Chiwenga will not deliver anything meaningful or any meaningful change, just like what Mnangagwa did. And he's doing the same thing, but we're failing to understand, which is quite sad. Because we're just going to be reliving and doing the same thing. And rightfully, like you said, we're just going around and around in circles, recycling rubbish.
Thank you very much, Ben. So as we now are in the middle or near the end of the countdown, Monday is only a day away now. People will see whether people come out in support of the Geza revolution or they don't. But let me say it loudly and clearly. The need for this ZANU-PF regime to go is there. If there was no threat of violence by the regime, I believe that many people will go out and support and demand that Mnangagwa should go. Because, like I said, everything he has done clearly shows that there is failure here. The very fact that a whole group of war veterans, the overwhelming majority of all the war veterans, are so destitute, they appreciate the gift of a 3-roomed house and a borehole and a bicycle. They could never, they'd failed to buy those simple items for themselves in the last 45 years. Speaks volumes of this regime's failure. And like I said, the war veterans are not the only group in society that are destitute. Over 50% of Zimbabweans are living in abject poverty. And to the war veterans, think about it. If the regime should decide or should be displeased with you in any way, we can be certain of one thing. You will lose that house and the borehole. This is how the regime operates. In any other country, you should be allowed to belong to any political party of your own choice. Not so in Zimbabwe. And by refusing to give you title deeds, the regime is making sure that they have got control over you. You dare not cross the regime. And I'm sure that all those war veterans who would have wanted to support Geza right now may find themselves being denied the borehole, and the house, and the bicycle. It is a sickening political system. Think about it. Thank you very much for those who were able to listen and join us. And we hope you'll be able to do it again tomorrow, 6 o'clock UK time, 8 o'clock Zimbabwean time. Thank you very much. Have a good night.